All right, so we got a poll going before we get started here with chapter of 12 and a half, Tenacity. So the poll is, are you seeking growth? Give it a couple of minutes while people may come in or not, and I'm going to do a reading. Hope everybody's well. Happy holidays. So this chapter is one of the emotional chapters Gary talks about, tenacity. Definition: the quality or fact of being very determined, determination. We live in a world where the word hustle has been manipulated and even demonized. To some, it means burnout and fatigue. Stated when anybody wants to associate those words with me. If you want to be successful in anything, I do believe that tenacity is essential. However, it should never come at the expense of your peace of mind and happiness. Tenacity should never equal burnout. I'm sad that some people haven't been able to separate those two words. But I have empathy for them. A lot of people view tenacity in the same way I viewed candor. Throughout my life, I've been unable to separate candor from the negative way I saw deployed in my life. So I avoided it completely. Repeat that. Throughout my life, I've been unable to separate candor from the negative way I saw it deployed in my life. So I avoided it completely. When I see people confuse hustle or tenacity with burnout, I'm not mad, I get it. But there's a clear difference between the two. Burnout is physical or mental collapse caused by overwork or stress. Tenacity is determination. The reason I talk about enjoying the process of achieving your ambitions is that people burn themselves out by chasing $1 million, a Mercedes Benz, a Chanel bag, or a private flight. The reason that this commonly leads to burnout is that such people are almost always trying to achieve those things for the approval of others, not for themselves. If you guys are just joining, we're doing a reading of 12 and a half, chapter on tenacity. The reason I talk about enjoying the process of achieving your ambitions is that people burn themselves out by chasing $1 million. Oh, I just skipped a part. But there's a clear difference between the two. Burnout is physical or mental collapse caused by overwork or stress. Tenacity is determination. And if you guys have a chance, go ahead and answer the poll. Thank you for liking and subscribing to the channel if you're not. The reason I talk about enjoying the process of achieving your ambitions is that people burn themselves out by chasing $1 million, Mercedes Benz, Chanel bag, or private flight. The reason that this commonly leads to burnout is that such people are almost always trying to achieve those things for the approval of others, not for themselves. When you put yourself in a position to base your happiness on outside validation and on material proxies of success, you will always, and I mean always, be on the cusp of burnout. This is why I try to communicate that these can't be the goals we put on a pedestal. Instead, what if you work on something you genuinely love? What if you work towards a goal truly for yourself, instead of trying to buy something to prove something to someone else? Being tenacious is about telling yourself, I enjoy the process so much that I'm able to push through various others normally view as obstacles along the way. For example, in my mid-20s, from my former classmates would stop by my dad's liquor store. And these were people who graduated and became doctors, lawyers, Wall Street professionals. They would buy expensive champagne. I'd walk them into the basement and grab it, bring the case back up, bring them up to the register, carry it out to their car, and put it in their trunk. In their eyes, I remember seeing a mix of pity and ego. I was that kid who was still working at his dad's liquor store. It was my tenacity and conviction that allowed moments to motivate or rather than it became a healthy chip on my shoulder. As you'll see in part two, my immediate reaction was to challenging scenarios normally involves a mix of soft traits like empathy, kindness, and gratitude. But the Raghav Haran, my partner on this book, just pointed out that we were writing this time in my early 20s was one of the few times in my life when I went with a little more teeth. I had a little more my tenacity and conviction. But very quickly behind that, I deployed empathy and patience. How could I expect my 25-year-old friends to know how strategic and thoughtful I was at that age? If you guys are just joining, we are reading a chapter out of 12 and a half. Thank you for being on the stream. This is just a quick reading. I also have a poll going. If you're not seeking growth, that's okay. Maybe you're just not there yet. Thank you for being here. They didn't know my obsession at the time was to spend over a decade building up my dad's business as a thank you to my parents for what they did. How could they? That was a rare decision to make in those times and continues to be an extremely rare one. They didn't know I had a strong grasp of what 80, 90, and 100 years looks like. I had patience and perspective. The thought of working in my dad's liquor store for a few years didn't scare me. I never felt I was behind or off track. I had empathy. I had to empathize because they didn't know I was going to the greatest heights. At that point in my life, I had tremendous perspective about time. My thought was that I would make a deposit with my time from my age 22 to 32 for my family. It seemed incredibly easy in a word, or I get over 10,000 DMs, Instagram, a month from people who are struggling because they haven't figured it out at 26. I found it interesting to hone my craft in the trenches of Wine Library, a retail business where I was interacting with customers for 15 hours a day. I was sharpening my skills as a communicator because I had to worry about sales every day. The business was our livelihood. It was how we ate. But I also knew that one day I wouldn't be working there. By building a brand that my dad could leverage in perpetuity, I wouldn't feel sadness in my 40s and 50s that his business disappeared after I left. How could anyone understand all that? The point is, it didn't matter what they did. I knew it. And that fueled my drive. Conviction and tenacity work hand in hand. When you have conviction in what you're doing, it's easier to be tenacious. Thought process of writing this book. I've ironically been thinking about the competitiveness, a word that's surprisingly not found often in my content over the last decade. However, I'm realizing that I probably sell short how much tenacity, conviction, and my internal fire to win in my process are foundational in who I am. My intuition at the exact moment as I'm writing this tells me that tenacity is the seed to the next book. If you guys are here, this is a reading of the chapter Tenacity we just finished. If you haven't checked out this book, it's by Gary V, 12 and a half, and the next chapter is Curiosity.